Howdy YouTubers, with this video I'm going to be covering ThruNite Ti Hi. Now you'd be forgiven if you thought that this was the original Ti Christmas version. I mean, it practically is, right down to the packaging in the box. Case in point, this is the original packaging of the original ThruNite Ti version, Christmas. The only exception being that this one just has the label Hi on it. Now that HI is in reference to the new emitter that's in here, the XPL Hi. Before we get into the deep dive of this little gem, it did arrive in the packaging that you see there. Comes with the instruction manual, a clip, as well as a little lobster claw keychain, and a spare O-ring in there. I've recreated this table to cover off the specs really quick. ThruNite opted to go with the XPL Hi emitter, as I had mentioned earlier. So what they're doing is they're sacrificing a little bit of total output in lumens, but they're gaining in terms of the peak beam intensity. It's a max distance of 45 meters for the original Ti X-Mas version versus 53 meters for this XPL Hi version. Max output is 120 lumens for 30 minutes, peak beam intensity of 711 candela, as I mentioned, a beam meter to 53 meters, and waterproof rated to IPX8 2 meters with an impact resistance of 1.5 meters. Now, for those who may not be familiar with the XPL Hi emitter, I first covered that in my Menker T01 review, so if you want to know the differences between the two, XPL normal and XPL Hi, just take a look at the first few minutes. There's a TLC, so use that. But bottom line is that it has a shaved dome, so thereby creating more throw, but as mentioned, at a slight sacrifice of total output. Now, again, this is a twisty single AAA light. The working voltage is from 0.9 to 3 volts, so you cannot use lithium ions in there. Although on the forums some people have, but I don't know, personally I'd not recommend it. Because first of all, titanium, in case you didn't realize, is not a very good conductor of heat, so it would actually trap the heat in here, and then the heat generated by overdriving it with a lithium ion cell, I think would just eventually fry the emitter. But of course, just my personal opinion and recommendation, feel free to do what you want with your own light. On the front end, there is no AR coating that I can discern, and behind the lens is a orange peel reflector, as you can see there. And centered within is that XPL Hi emitter. And here's a close-up shot of that. There is knurling at the head and the body of light. The light simply twists off in two pieces. I know you could probably barely make that out, but there's a spring at the end of this barrel here, the battery tube. And on the head, there's just a single solid piece with the PCB board there. Now there is no physical reverse battery protection, so again, just be a little bit mindful when you're putting battery in, and on this side. The Hi is engraved right there, as you can see, so that's what distinguishes it between the regular Ti version. And that's really it. That's the only engraving along with the serial number. At the tail end here, it's got a flat base, so you could use it in candlelight mode. There's also that attachment point for the included lobster claw, or a wrist strap of your own choosing. And that's really it. That covers the light. I've cut the lights to demonstrate the UI and the output level. Currently, with one twist on, it always defaults to the lowest mode, which is kind of like this nice little firefly mode that you see there. I do have this on fixed exposure and sunny white balance, so the beam is pretty true to real life, although it's not really capturing the spill very well. But right now this is on medium, and then with another twist on and off, this is on max output high. Now there is a pseudo memory mode, so right now I'm going to enter medium. Now if you shut off the light and wait at least 2 seconds, but no longer than a maximum of 10 seconds, it'll re-enter that memory mode. But like I said, once you're past 10 seconds, it'll lose that memory. Now there is also a hidden strobe mode, which is accessed by turning it on and off at least 6 times in quick succession, so it's a little tricky to do that. As you see, I just missed it, but there you go. This is never memorized.
Here's the runtime chart of the Ti Hi on Hi. ThruNite had claimed a total runtime of 30 minutes, although they didn't specify the battery used, but in my case, I use an inner-loop AAA rated at 800 mAh, and the starting voltage was freshly charged at 1.48 volts, ending voltage was 0.81, and I achieved a total runtime of 41, so that's a total runtime, again, according to ANSI records, before it drops below 10% of the measured value of 30 seconds. The lumens captured was 122.8 at 30 seconds, and the average for the total run was 93 lumens. Ambient room temperature was 69 degrees, although I have my fluke out for repair, so that's why I didn't bother with the temperature capture. Plus, not to mention, it's always very difficult with these small lights with the thick wire of the temperature probe. Anyway, looking at this, it resembles the run of their larger lights dating back to like the TN10, TN11, in that it tries to attempt a sort of regulated run for a short duration, and then when it can, it falls out and then does a gradual decline. Overall, not too bad. I mean, it does maintain at least the claimed output for roughly the first 3.5 minutes before it just starts dropping down. And as mentioned, the overall life of the run, it doesn't drop significantly, is 93 lumens, so that's not too bad.
Now here's the Ti Hi on my left and the Ti original on the right. As you can see, the Ti has a much floodier beam profile owing to its regular XPL emitter. The hotspot is fairly wider as well versus the tighter hotspot of the Ti Hi and the skinnier overall width of the beam profile. And here is the pattern at equidistance. Although slightly overexposed, you can see the tighter hotspot on the left side here versus the broader hotspot on the right side there. And that tint color is pretty true to real life, so I feel the Ti is definitely a little bit cooler than the Ti Hi on my left.
Here's ThruNite Ti Hi. They quoted 53 meter beam distance, which should translate to 711 candela, and 44 lux at 4 meters. Here's ThruNite Ti4. I've previously measured this, but still, just for consistency's sake, I like to measure it again along with the other AAA lights. So they quoted 67 meter beam distance, which is 1120 candela, or 70 lux at 4 meters. And here's ThruNite Ti Christmas Edition light. They touted 45 meter beam distance for this one, which translates to 506 candela and 32 lux at 4 meters. So here you can see the difference of the Ti versus the Ti Hi, in that this has a very nice floody beam profile, but a bit less throw and not as tight a hotspot.
So as an initial conclusion, I mean this light is pretty much identical to the original Ti version with the exception of the emitter and of course the overall beam profile. The look and feel is the same, the UI is exactly identical. Now speaking about that UI, I've never been crazy about that pseudo memory. I would have preferred actually a real memory so that way it would memorize the last use output mode. Although on an EDC of this size, I can kind of see why they did that, because you don't want to accidentally blast this in the middle of the night and ruin your dark adapted eyes. But again, if that's something you remember, you could probably just cover it up. Although that's a little hard to do, I wouldn't say hard, awkward to do, using your finger to block it off to switch to modes and finally reach the right one that you have. I feel the output levels are spaced very nicely apart. Why would you choose this over the Ti is if you want that extra few meters of throw. It's not that significant in real life, but with dark adapted eyes, it could make the difference between seeing something out additional 5 to 10 meters versus missing it. Now the only thing is this corner here, I kind of feel that's a little bit sharp, so if you just dump this into your pocket, it can poke you. I don't know if there's a better graceful implementation for this, but that would be nice to see on a future revision, a different way of implementing the thread through. Now one thing about this is I've noticed that it initially came a bit more grittier than say on the Ti, but over time that's gone away with use. So it wouldn't necessarily say it's a production issue because like I said, I didn't see that on the Ti, but nonetheless, I'm going to provide this feedback to ThruNite. Another thing I would love to have seen them do is support lithium ion, but I can totally see why they didn't because like as I have mentioned, titanium is not a very good conductor of heat, so don't really want a lot of heat-related failures returning to them, so I can kind of see why they stuck with just the 0.9 to 3 volt range. Although, of course, if they could figure out a way to manage the heat, maybe even a step down, it would be pretty cool to see a true pocket blaster somewhere in the range of, I don't know, 500 lumens per se in a AAA light. And that has actually been achieved before. If I'm not mistaken, there's the Torpedo, I forgot, it's MBI or something like that. That individual did make a AAA size light, if I'm not mistaken, pumping around 500 lumens. The titanium will scratch fairly easily even though it is a stiffer metal, but softer in terms of scratchability. So here's my original Ti after months of use, and as you can see, yeah, it's definitely incurred a decent amount of scratching already. As you can see on the base here, here's a nice new, brand new Ti Hi, nicely polished, and here's the scuffed up Ti. Now my favorite new EDC has been the Manco U11, so I can't envision carrying this. Plus, not to mention, I've just never really been a AAA size fan. I've always been either the AA or 16340, and of course, on occasions, a very nice compact 18650. So for me, this is not a typical form factor that I see myself carrying. Bottom line, another solid release, if not significantly different. As mentioned, I would like to challenge ThruNite to see if they could implement those changes I had previously mentioned. As part of FTC disclosure, the ThruNite Ti Hi was provided by ThruNite for review. Thanks again for watching.